Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll bring this special City Council meeting to order. If you would all rise for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which this evening will be led by Vice Mayor Jones. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember McPartland.
Here.
And Councilmember Nunn.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Council, for being here. I apologize to everyone for having to be here on a Friday evening. Hopefully this doesn't take too darn long and we can get on with our lives. This evening we're going to be discussing the Graves Brothers Company annexation. There have been some changes since the last meeting that we had that I thought were important that the council have discussions moving forward, and I believe it was very time sensitive. So I appreciate everyone being here this evening. Mr. Carlisle?
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, at the last meeting, there was a statement, do it in the end, put the flume out at the end of September, P&Z, and then there was a statement, well, we need to hold off until we get the annexation agreement for the flume to go forward. You know, our request from council is that we go ahead and allow the flume to go to P&Z. They're only recommending approval. They don't do any approvals, trying to keep this on some track. All this will have to come back to you. All of it has to come back to you as a public hearing for you to finalize it. But just to get clarification and try to get this thing on track, get this flume to P&Z on September 15th. We did notice it in case you all agreed with that. And that way we could, if you decide not to do that, then we can just cancel it or pull the ad or table it or continue it at the Planning and Zoning meeting. Ms. Frazier also has put together the timeline based on statutory requirements for the annexation. That's not saying you have to follow that timeline, but that is the available timeline that is there. And you can provide input on that tonight if you'd like, or we can schedule that as we go through the process. But tonight the biggest is clarification for me, just to make sure that I'm following the clear direction of City Council, and that we recommend that Council allow staff to proceed with the flume. Recommendations only from Planning and Zoning.
All right, thank you. Ms. Frazier, do you have a presentation? Or are you just here for answering questions?
No, sir, it is working. No, sir, I do not. But I put together that schedule just so that you all understood what dates are in front of us and how the process proceeds. Again, as Mr. Carlisle succinctly stated, we can change it, we can modify it in any way. But I am here to provide you with any type of professional recommendations as you need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So council, you know, since the last meeting, you know, we sort of gave a head nod to the city manager to sort of tap the brakes, which the previous meeting, all five of us gave him a head nod to go forward with the annexation. So he had staff go forward and get the flume ready for presentation to the Planning and Zoning, was preparing the advertising and all the necessary things to get that meeting in place. But at our last meeting, we decided that we're just going to sort of tap the brakes, table the thing on the 13th, and sort of just let it ride until we have an annexation agreement draft in place. My understanding is that the landowner wasn't very amenable to that. And that to me is quite frankly understandable. When you're involved in these things, you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that are tied up in getting these things handled. And this has been going on for quite some time now. As it states in the annexation timeline, we had a first reading on this on May 25th, where we set a second public hearing for adoption on September 13th. Now, this council together decided that we would go ahead and have a couple of workshops, and those workshops delayed the actual ability to have that reading on the 13th, so we're going to go ahead and table that on the 13th. However, it didn't stop us from going through with the statutory requirements, which include presenting the flume to the Planning and Zoning Committee and going through all of the other requirements that are there. Now, there were some things that were stated at the last council meeting that council members were wanting to get additional information from the county staff, and potentially from county commissioners, and that's understandable. That can happen even while going forward with the statutory requirements and getting a timeline in place and moving forward with this project. All of those things can happen. The annexation does not occur until we all say yes, or whoever's up here says yes in the last meeting to annex the property. And that would be with an annexation agreement in place, in their hands, and anyone up here would be willing to say no or yes to the annexation, whether or not it was in the best interest of the city of Sebastian. I, quite frankly, am not one who is willing to gamble on the future control for the city of Sebastian in the growth and development that occurs over the next several decades. I don't wish to do that. I've seen in the past where council has done that, and if you go back to 2007, when the city of Sebastian had a tap the brakes, let's stop everything, slow everything down, not go forward with the annexations, the city of Ellesmere virtually took over a third of the county. Now, I know I exaggerated in that, so I want to make sure that I'm on the record as saying that's an exaggeration, okay? but the annexation was tremendous, as we all know. And we all know that the city of Ellesmere is potentially going to be going forward with adding 22,000 homes potentially, or more. Who knows? More than the city of Sebastian has by far. So we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to make sure that I believe we protect the city of Sebastian going forward. I think that every single person's request on this council can be fulfilled as we move forward and go through the process. And up until that last day, we can gain all of the information we have. There was a statement that if the flume is passed through the planning and zoning, that will add ammunition to some weapons, and that is true. But I think that everyone up here has the eloquence to go forward and explain to the individuals out there who may be voting or who may be concerned about these things that that's impossible based upon the actual ordinances that we have in place in the city of Sebastian. So I would like to get some clear direction given to the city manager this evening. I think it's important that he and his staff know exactly what this council wants him to do going forward. We've already made the determination that we're going to annex the property. We did that on May 25th. So all I'm asking is that we give him clear direction. Do we go forward with the statutory requirements on a timeline that the property owner, who has a right to have a reasonable timeline through this annexation so his hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars are not tied up, not knowing what's going to happen, can we go forward and do that or not? So I guess that's why I called you all here this evening, and I look forward to having a wonderful conversation.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
First thing I'd like to do is ask Mr. Jason Brown to come up, because I want to clarify some stuff that the city is not working with the county, and I'd like Mr. Jason Brown to come up and let us know if those dialogues are happening right now.
Well, he can do that if he wishes to.
Yes.
But
If you want to, sir.
Mr. Brown, if you would like to come forward, that would be great. Thank you. You are not on the stand, and you are not under oath, and you
That's
are
right.
not required to come up here.
Friendly conversation.
But we do appreciate you coming up here this evening.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Anything?
Your mic is not on.
Is it not?
It's on.
It's on?
Is
Yeah.
it? Okay. And
There
we
you
can
go.
Speak into it better.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Yeah, for the record, I think we've had some discussions with city staff. We've had some discussions with the landowner. I think those have been positive so far. I think we've been proceeding positively. Appreciate the opportunity for the county to provide input into the process. We plan to do that and get those comments to you hopefully early next week, and look forward to discussing those. You know, there may be things that the city doesn't like or whatever. We fully understand that, you know, and we just look forward to continuing to collaborate in the process. And so far, we've had good discussions with both city staff and the property owner in this.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that,
Thank you
Mr.
so much.
Brown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second thing, I'm okay with continuing with doing our due diligence during this process while we continue forward with the annexation agreement. And we can continue to do this nonstop during this whole process. So I really like for us to move forward. And there's some things that's been said out there. There's some new buzzwords that's going on, buzz phrases like let's pump the brakes, let's do this. You know, this has been a long process, and we're moving forward. Our staff, along with communicating with our partners throughout the community, are working very hard together to make sure that we do this thing the right way. And as long as we stay within the law and follow the guidelines and the procedures of annexation, I think we will do just fine, so.
All right. More?
No, hang on just a second.
Yes, sir.
And also, the majority of our citizens has already agreed. They like the annexation. They want this property to be annexed into the city. So those are some things that we have to consider. The majority of our citizens want this annexation. And I know that there were problems before with maps and other things with annexation of a previous property. But I think we've learned a lesson here. And we have, like I said, we have a professional staff that will continue to do the things that are necessary to make this worthy for the city. And you know, I've said this before, that I believe in order for us to remain sustainable and grow into the future, that we must expand our borders. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to do that. And as long as we continue to work with our community partners and everything, I think this will be a good thing for the city of Sebastian. So I'm all for moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dodd?
Yeah, so obviously, I think the timeline is set forth that you gave us tonight makes perfect sense. I do agree totally. I know I agreed last night that we would move it to in my eyes, in my opinion, and what I said. I went back and watched the meeting. I was clearly okay with going to the last meeting, possibly for planning and zoning in September. I didn't want to delay it further than that. I think we have a very capable team that's done an amazing job of putting this together, worked very close with the property owner. I know they've had the discussions with the county, so I agree that those things are happening. Some of the discussions that need to be had with the county don't necessarily need to happen completely before we get through these first processes. We also have a very good planning and zoning board that's able to think clearly. That's why they're there. That's why we have those P&Z members on that board, because they know how to look at something. Yes, it's going to say 10 houses per acre because of mixed use, but we have a P&Z board that'll understand the full process. It's not like they're going to look, oh my God. No, they know the process. They know what's going on. They know how to handle this. Once again, the P&Z board does not make decisions. They make recommendations to us, and then we make decisions. All of that with public input. Public input there, public input here, lots of public input, lots of meetings. I think we need to move forward. I think we need to not risk losing this annexation so that we can bend our knee to groups that will never be happy. I think we have an excellent group of people handling this. We got a land use attorney so that it covers all the things that we might not think of. Not that there's anything we're not thinking of, but that's their job, is to put a second set of eyes and to make sure it all fits the legal requirements of the state. We need to move forward. The only thing we can do by not doing that is lose this annexation. And then we have, guess what? Every single thing that's going to go on that property that's going to affect our city is going to affect us exactly the same, except we'll have no control over it and we'll have no money from it. If you don't think those two things matter, I don't know if you're paying attention. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dodd.
Okay. Speaker on. Okay, first of all, I was probably the most vocal person on Wednesday night. In fact, my wife told me I spoke way too much. And sometimes I listen to her and sometimes I don't. That's what happens in long marriages. But I would tell you right now that if I'd had this schedule produced by the staff and given to me before Wednesday night, I never would have said a word. Never would have said a word. Let's sink that in. Now, second thing about my comments on Wednesday night, anybody that's watched me up here for the last 6 years knows that I typically don't bend very well. And I didn't make my comments because it's what I thought somebody wanted me to say. I made those comments because I thought it was the best thing for the city of Sebastian and its residents. So I just want to make that very clear. I have no problem with this at all, now that I see this schedule, because quite frankly, us hearing this on December 14th gives us plenty of time to put together an annexation agreement, all right? It gives us plenty of time to do the stuff that we need to do. I'm still concerned about not having, and we don't have a definition of mixed use anywhere except in the comp plan, and it does not define what mixed use is. We can talk about that at a later time, but right now, mixed use, it can be up to 10 units per acre. I think the county administrator said that to Bob Sues very well yesterday morning. I think twice he said it. He then clarified that by saying, but I don't think that's what Sebastian has envisioned. And I agree with him. I think my comments about that the other night was, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think our staff thinks that's going to happen. I don't think Mr. Bass thinks that's going to happen. But there is an ample opportunity for the confusion to set in, and the confusion creates dissension, and dissension creates problems. So I have no issue with it going forward. I have one thing. We're going to hear this on the 13th, and on our schedule it says table or adopt. And I had a conversation with the city attorney today about adoption, because I actually thought, man, I've screwed this thing up. I've got this owner thinking I don't support his annexation, so I'm in favor possibly on the 13th of adopting the annexation and making it contingent on the Flume passing council's approval and the annexation agreement passing council's approval. And our city attorney explained to me the negative impact of that. And it was a perfectly good explanation as to why we don't want to do that. We really need to do all three in one meeting. And I think December 14th is fine to do that. So I have no issue moving forward. If you need a motion, I'll make it. If you don't, since we did it by consensus the last time, we could do it by consensus again. I have no problem moving forward with Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, Mr. Dodd, if I could let, Councilman Dodd, I would like, just for a clarification, just for a codification of what we're going to do going forward, I would like to have a vote on exactly what we're going to do moving forward this evening.
Okay, then I will make a motion that we adopt the schedule that was provided to us. The heading of that schedule is City of Sebastian Legal Process, Grace Brothers Annexation, Flume. It's dated August 2022. With one modification, that under City Council, second reading adoption hearing set for September 13th, we remove the word adopt.
Mr. Mayor, I think this city manager has something that he needs to add.
Yes.
Our concern with that is you're going to open a public hearing and you're going to predetermine it here. The reason it's written that way.
Okay.
I thought you.
Please go ahead.
The reason it's written that way is we don't want to predispose your decisions on that hearing. We want to make sure that you all open the public hearing and you make your determination after the public hearing is open, is my recommendation.
So you would leave the word adopt in there
This is
simply
only a
because
schedule.
it's up to the
This is
council
only
at
a
that
schedule.
time?
Yeah, this is
Okay,
only a schedule.
I just don't want anybody to think well, I shouldn't say that. 3 people might vote to adopt on the 13th.
Again,
That's simple.
I think
Okay.
we need to open the public hearing and conduct a public hearing and then.
This 1 of 5 will not vote to adopt on the 13th. So,
And I appreciate
it's that simple.
that.
So I have no problem with this. And like I'm saying, I mean, I was the one who raised that issue. I still believe.
Mr. Dodd, if I could, I just want, just moving forward, I appreciate this. Your motion, did you remove your motion or do you make your motion without removing the adopt?
Okay, that's fine. I'll modify my motion and remove the condition on removing the word adopt.
Okay.
Just that we approve this schedule.
All right, very good. I'll second that.
Now, I would like
Go ahead.
to make sure that Vanny agrees that he can have the agreement done by and available to us by the 14th.
I know I had my conversation with all of you privately, and both Mr. Googleman and I had a meeting with a telephone, an hour and a half conversation with Mr. Bass's attorney, and we are hopeful, is what I can say to this point, and that gives me over almost 2 months to come with something to bring to you guys way ahead of time as a draft format, and then we'll take it from there. But yeah, that should give us plenty of time.
Okay, all right. So I'm fine with that. You know, I don't want to stop this thing in any way, shape, or form. So I'm done.
Okay.
So what are we talking about, the 13th?
Well, we're gonna have the hearing on the 13th as it's already scheduled to be.
Right, right.
Um,
That's
and-
on Tuesday.
And we're either gonna table or adopt on the 13th.
Right.
The likelihood of us adopting pre-review of the Planning and Zoning Committee is not very good. So it'll likely be tabled on the 13th until reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Well, they're gonna review it
On the 15th, I think.
on the 15th.
That's correct.
Right.
So it would not likely be adopted by council
Right.
on the
Okay, so
13th,
first.
when we don't have advice from our Planning and Zoning Committee at that point.
It's too late for them to do a meeting on the 1st?
The advertising timeframe is too short
I thought you advertised it yesterday,
for the 15th.
for the 15th, okay.
Oh.
May I add one thing?
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to just say, I would encourage everything possible to make sure that document is ready for us on the 14th. To me, that should be like
All parties.
top priority of getting things done. I know you have other responsibilities and other jobs, but I think for the purposes of this annexation, the purposes of doing what's best for the city, the purposes of taking care of the property owner, because he is the one requesting this voluntary annexation, is do everything that can happen to make sure that document's done by that day for
Yes.
us. Thank you.
Yeah, and that would include the property owner.
And that would,
That him and
definitely.
his people do that.
Of course.
Bob?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I agree with Mr. Dodd. This would have been very helpful to have on Wednesday. But I hear it's been a long process. As far as I know, for this annexation, it started in May of this year when he brought it back. I've heard some places it was 4 years. It's not. And I sat up here 3 years ago when the annexation went through 5-0-5-0. And this one's a little bit different. The only thing this has in common with the last annexation was a map that went in was wrong. That's the only thing. This one's much bigger. And I think, my understanding is, I thought we've been pretty clear every meeting in knowing where we're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. Like when I heard the 2 workshops have slowed down this process. The 2 workshops were agreed upon at the first reading, I believe. Is that correct? Or that's not correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Right, so that didn't slow the process down. We were going to have the 2 workshops in there. So it slowed it down?
Well, that came from me. So if you're asking me, then
Okay.
I would say that yes, it did slow the process down, because when we had that initial meeting on the 25th, we set a public hearing for the 13th. When we set that public hearing for the 13th, and then we had the workshops got in place and didn't allow for us to advertise with plenty of time to have the meeting on the 13th.
But what I'm saying is,
So I'm finishing the answer, Mr. McFarland, thank you for asking it. But those workshops actually caused the process to sort of crumble a little bit based upon the fact that we didn't have the advertising time after having the workshops and then having to have the presentation from staff about the workshops and then deciding finally to move forward. And by the time we finally decided to move forward, all 5 of us decided to move forward 2 meetings ago. At that point, it was too late to have the planning and zoning meeting review the flume prior to us doing the meeting on the 13th. So if that math works for you, do you get the dates and everything?
but it's implied some people that are hearing it the first time is that the first reading went through, and then the workshops got added in, and that's not what happened. The workshops were a part of the first reading, that we were gonna hold these 2 workshops. That's my understanding. There's some other things, and I don't know if, when I heard you yesterday on Mr. Souza's show, it's like staff is not getting direction, they're confused, but Mr. Carlisle never called me and said he wasn't clear on direction. Now, I was down at the county commission meeting on, I believe it was the 16th of August, he was down there. I watched the tape, over and over. I mean, this thing, I usually don't sleep at night, but I was up all last night, because I heard we're having this meeting, about this. And I was pretty clear at that meeting. I asked, Mr. Carlisle, I said, I would like to see, and it's, they have the tape of the meeting, and I asked for it to be put up. At the end of that meeting, what I asked for is for Mr. Brown, Mr. Reingold, possibly Phil Mattson, to come up, discuss what had happened so far between the city, the property owner, and everything, and to let us know what their concerns are. And that's what I asked for Mr. Carlisle to put on the agenda. He told me no. He said, we'll put it under your matters. I was like, fine. So when I get the agenda gets published, the agenda said, ask Indian River County to provide input on items they would like to see in the Graves Brother annexation agreement. Now, I know certain council members up here, they read that statement, that goes over like a fart in church. Okay? That's not what I asked. Okay? And that was put on the agenda. So I get a feeling that sometimes there is some communication that goes between council members that I'm not privy to. I also was the one who asked for Mr. Bass and the Sebastian River Improvement District to come before this board. And I was told he couldn't come this meeting because he was on vacation. I understand that. I went on vacation. I participated in the meeting by Zoom. I had my agenda. And on the agenda, under presentations, it had that the Graves Brother workshop was going to be presented by Lisa Frazier. There was no mention that Mr. Bass or the Sebastian River Improvement District were on the agenda. So the only time that I knew that Mr. Bass was at your meeting was when he stepped up to the podium. And then it was turned on. Okay, Mr. McParland, you requested Mr. Bass to be at this meeting. What questions do you have? I was not expecting him at all. It was not on the agenda. I mean, is that accurate, or am I making this up? Mr. Carlisle?
So one is, that was on the agenda, and I'm not blaming Jeanette, it got pulled off, and I asked you to put it back on, because it was originally on the agenda, and it got pulled off. I misunderstood what you said at the county commission meeting, and what we've always done is if a council member wants something on the agenda, ever since we had the 2019, it's always been the council member asks for it to go on, it goes under their matters, and they ask the council to move it to an agenda item or to put it on a future agenda. That's the way we've been doing it since 2019, because of council members certain council members at the time just wanting to put things on an agenda, and we want to make sure the council doesn't set the agenda, staff does. So, and I call you and tell you everything I tell all the other council members. I misunderstood what you said at the council commission meeting, and I apologize. It's not something that but I talk to you as much as I talk to the others. I tell you everything.
Did you tell me what it was going to read like on the agenda?
No, but I didn't tell any of the others.
I'm saying then when we came to the meeting on Wednesday, I asked to move my matter up if we could. And anybody who saw the tape, I mean, they could see how the meeting went. And the reason it went that way, and because I also mentioned, that's not what I asked for, is that I was asked the Indian River County what they want in an annexation. You know, like they're dictating. I don't know what everybody thinks is that I bow down to people. You know, I heard that before, fear or all this. I'm not afraid of the public. You know, if I think something is right and in the best interest for the citizens, I am there. It doesn't matter what it is. And I've been up here a long time. I mean, the other factor I go through is there's 3 council members up here who were here the last time through this annexation process. And again, it went 5-0, 5-0. 2 out of those 3 are saying, let's slow down a little bit. And it's like we're not paying attention. I don't get that part. So, I mean, I would like to know, is anybody else there getting a different message that I'm not hearing?
If you want my opinion on that, I call the city manager all the time and ask him questions about certain things that are going on. He doesn't, I mean, he calls and gives me information on an upcoming agenda if there's something that I need to be aware of, and I'm sure he does that for everyone, and he tells me that he does that for everyone, but I personally actually make the phone call to him, or I go to his office and I'll have a conversation with him about something that may be on the agenda. So, I mean, I might have more information than you, Mr. McParland, but I seek it out.
Oh, I asked what I wanted on the agenda. specifically. And I mean, we could play the county commission tape, and you can see what my
Well,
statements were
I
at the
saw the
end.
county commission tape too. I
Right.
watched it, you did good, but he's already said that he made a mistake, and he apologized for that.
Okay, and then the mistake with Mr. Bash showing up at the presentation that was not on the agenda.
Apparently, there was misinformation between staff.
Okay, so there's that two misinformations for me, and
I didn't know, I know everything that's on the agenda, just as you do. When I get my agenda, I call the city manager to discuss the items that are on the agenda. Prior to my receiving it, I don't know anything that's even gonna be on there. So the only thing that I do, and that's just me, I mean, there's 5 council members up here, you guys can discuss it yourselves. But when I get an agenda, and I look at it, I make a phone call to the city manager and I say, oh, listen, I have a question about this, this grant that we're getting out at the airport, or this grant we're not gonna receive. What's going on with that? Is it just the cost of the building materials or whatever, blah, blah, blah? And then I have the answer, so I don't have to pull that item from the consent. Or I ask, questions about something that I may want to know a little bit more about, just in case it comes up from the public or something like that. So I do communicate with the city manager, but I actually engage the city manager in those communications. So,
Yeah, and me personally, I'm always here at City Hall. When I get my agenda, the first thing I do is go through it a couple of times, and then I come to City Hall, I speak to staff, city manager. If there's anything I want on the agenda, I put it in writing or an email so that there's no confusion about what to be expected on the agenda, not word of mouth. So yeah, I spend the time here, and I learn everything I can about what's on our agenda from our professional staff, and they answer my questions, and I have questions when I'm up here, and sometimes they don't know all the questions I'm gonna ask, and I don't want them to know all the questions that I'm gonna ask, because sometimes things comes up later, and I ask them here. But I spend the time, so, and I talk to staff, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to agree and disagree a little bit here, and I'm not going to talk about whether I talked to him about the agenda and so forth. If there's a communication issue between Mr. Carlisle and one of the council members, it's up to Mr. Carlisle to correct that. Quite frankly, it's that simple. But I disagree that they didn't have a clear message. They had a clear message. Something happened that changed that message. It was very clear what we said last Wednesday night. There was no ambiguity in that. But in a conversation with the applicant, the city manager heard something that made him question whether we needed to rethink that. It's that simple. There was no lack of a clear message to the city staff. They got a clear message. They got a clear message on the 22nd, or the 25th of May, when we agreed to the annexation and we added 2 workshops. It was a clear message. And once again, I will say that if there had been a schedule put together that lays all this out, it would have been a bit different. Also, when was the first time you received a map that was capable of being sent out for the notification for the P&Z meeting? I'm asking Ms. Fraser this. When did you receive a map from the applicant that would allow you to notify the public about the P&Z meeting?
Well, so the P&Z meeting for the display ad, public noticing, it doesn't require a map for P&Z.
Okay.
But we had to have a map to follow Florida statute, which was the public noticing that Jeanette did just recently to the county, and
Right.
and advertising the adoption
Okay.
of the annexation. And we received that map, Jeanette, I want to say a week ago.
Yeah.
A week ago.
Yeah,
So
probably.
there isn't staff dilly-dallying here about this, that you didn't get the map. And my question is, when you did get the first map, was it correct or incorrect?
It was incorrect, sir.
All right. And who found the fact that it was incorrect?
Actually, the applicant.
The applicant did.
Yes, sir.
All right, when did that happen?
The beginning of August, sir.
Okay. I'm wanting to lay something out here. There's no miscommunication between this council and this staff. There seems to be a misinterpretation of whether that communication was clear or not. It was clear. The staff has acted as expeditiously as they could on what they had. They could not have increased this timetable no matter what they did, because they didn't have the data to increase this timetable. This hasn't been slowed down because the council or the staff slowed it down. May the 25th was the first time we read that. I agree 100% with Councilmember Partland on that. Okay? The annexation with the Grace Brothers annexation 1, as the city attorney calls it, annexation 2, which is right now, that may have been 4 years ago, but that died because we published a bad map. Okay? That died because we published a bad map. Do we want to take a chance? Do we want to take a chance with the citizens of this city that we publish another bad map? Because if we'd published the first map we got from them, we would have published another bad map. Okay? So now what we have to do is have our staff do a complete leaps and bounds test on this. Every single one of those geographical references from this latitude to this latitude to this latitude, because if any of that is incorrect and it goes to court, which it probably will, we're going to lose on that technicality. So we have to have our staff do that. Have we done that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I
So
don't
my
have
saying
the
is,
right
we don't
survey
publish
yet.
a map until we know it's correct, because we did it one time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We're in shame on me territory. All right? Now, I think it's time we move forward. You're saying we've properly notified that the P&Z meeting is going to take place on the 15th. Let's move to P&Z. Let's get it taken care of. Let's move forward under this schedule, recognizing that we can get this done by December the 14th, which quite frankly, for an annexation that increases the size of this city by 20% from May the 25th to December the 14th is pretty confounded fast. I don't see an issue with that, and anybody that does maybe has problems other than the annexation itself. I mean, so I think we should just quit all this trying to do this stuff and just pass the motion and move forward. So I want to call a question.
Oh, I seconded it. That sounds great, and I can tell I ruffle some feathers, and I'm okay with that. And I'm not going to argue anything. I only care about the city of Sebastian, so let's move forward and get what's done right.
Yeah.
Done, right. So I'm not going to argue with anybody. You guys are pissed, be pissed, but I just want to get this thing done. Yes, go ahead, Chris.
I do have one thing to add. I will be clear, though, Mr. McPartlin was upset because his item did not get moved, but I was very, very clear when I asked, was there a motion made, which was his opportunity to say, yes, I want to make a motion to move this to the agenda and for us to vote on it. He did not do so, so therefore that's on him. Sorry, but that's on him. That's not on us for moving forward. The opportunity was opened up because I wasn't sure he didn't make a motion, but it wasn't a motion, so it wasn't a motion.
All right, so
I spend my days, I work 60 hours a week in a full-time job and love my job, but I spend my days on the phone with Mr. Carlisle and other staff members talking about every item that's on the agenda and much, much, much more. I'm sure some days he looks at the phone and says, what the heck is he calling me back now? But that's my job. My job is to make sure we're doing what's right for the city, doing what's right for the employees, and taking care of things. And that's my job, and I take it very serious. I also take it very serious when anybody accuses of illegal things because they're annoyed because the communication's not good for them, and that really frustrated me a little while ago, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone and move forward. Let's call the question.
roll call.
Do I get to say anything?
Absolutely,
I don't
Mr.
know
Carr.
what something is
Go ahead, Mr. McFarland.
illegal. I'd like to know what happened, because I don't think I was involved. You know, another thing I'd like to know is, when I did call in for the meeting, you know, because I asked the question for this, would we be getting stormwater fee money from this annexation? And I recalled, and I gotta say, I was wrong, because I recalled in the last annexation agreement, I had thought it was $340,000 to $375,000 estimated stormwater fee. And Mr. Carlisle said 60. Is that what you said for that meeting?
I had Lisa calculate it up, and it was, I believe it was 67,000 in the administrative fees for stormwater.
Okay. And I did go back in the October 2019 meeting, and the estimate on that portion, whatever, 1,048 acres, it was $325,000 a year stormwater fee was the estimate. And I asked, this is a much larger piece. How did it all of a sudden get to 60? And that's why I think we need to have this annexation agreement that has all of those factors in. What are the benefits? This is what I've always said I've been for this annexation. I was for it last time. I'm for it this time. But I want to make sure everything is done and done correctly. And being transparent, we were transparent last time, but there's being transparent, there's being more transparent, and there's being most transparent. And I want to be in the most transparent side. And I want to make sure that makes Sebastian sustainable and that we have all that. And I think a strong annexation agreement is in order.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, can I answer that question about the stormwater fees? So my understanding was,
I'm not sure that there needs to be there's any relevance to that, or there's any need for an argument on it right now. This whole thing is just whether or not we're going forward with the decision we made on May 25th.
This calendar.
So I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public. I know that's probably not something that others want, but since we've got a motion and a second, anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item? Nope, just go ahead and talk. You got 5 minutes.
Good evening, council members. I'm Kelly Dixon. I've lived in Sebastian off and on since 1997. I really liked the tone of this meeting until about 5 minutes ago, and I really would appreciate if you guys do continue to move forward. I think there's been a lot of talk about wanting to get the county's input on this, and I don't quite understand why we want to give them such special allowances when, since I've been here, it's never seemed that the county cared that much about Sebastian, at least Sebastian's best interest. Point in case would be the placement of the IG Center, which is supposed to be for families of all ages for people in our county, yet they put it on Oslo Road, one of the furthest roads in our county. And many Sebastian kids can't even participate in sports because their families can't even drive all the way down. So I just don't understand why we would really want to stop this and potentially hurt Sebastian just because we want opinions from the county. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming back tonight to bring that clarification that's needed. Thank you for continuing to move this process forward. As someone whose husband works with a lot of attorneys, with a lot of land conservation and things throughout the nation, he deals a lot with land use attorneys. I think that's probably one of the best decisions that you made, was to bring somebody like that on. Not one of the best. You've made great decisions, but I think it was in addition to everything else that you're doing to bring, continue with the transparency. I think it's very important that you utilize your staff like you have been. I appreciate that. I think sometimes things are upside down, and I think you guys are handling things wonderfully by allowing your staff to handle these things. And yeah, you know what? Guess what? Mistakes will be made. They will be corrected. Oversight will be given by the council when mistakes are being made, but I don't like the fact that somebody's publicly shamed when they've already apologized for something. I do not appreciate that. And I think this staff is doing a wonderful job for this city and for their council members. And I think I liked what Councilman Jones said, that it's important to put things in writing, because off-the-cuff conversations can completely be misunderstood very easily. You're hearing things in the midst of people talking, and I happen to be at that county meeting as well. And there's a lot of communication going on in a lot of different directions, and you guys have a job and responsibility. And the way you're handling it is wonderful, and I want to encourage you to continue to put things in writing and make sure that it's clear so you have a paper trail. So that if there is confusion, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I think it's just incumbent upon the representation for the cities. I would also agree with Mrs. Dixon about the whole thing of we cannot cater to, we need input and transparency and communication between staffs, but you're responsible to the cities, the citizens of this city, not to the county. And I keep hearing the county, the county, the county, the county, and they're involved in the process, which I think is great. And I want to hear maybe a little more about, let's stay focused on what's best for the citizens. And thank you for your time. We really, really do, as a family, appreciate all of you guys giving of your time and your service. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Her name, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Patty Sullivan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Grace Reed, Sebastian. Good evening. I think we're beginning to see a consensus out here in the audience, but when we moved to Sebastian in 2019, we made several trips before we came, and we saw all the annexation signs at that time, and I never really paid any attention to them, because to me, annexation was good for a city. So I gladly voted on it in 2019 when we moved here. And I see now we're in the midst of another one, basically because of a small error in a map. But I'm in no way an expert on annexations, and I'm never going to pretend to be. However, one thing Mr. Sullivan just said about not being responsible to the county for what they necessarily want to see in it, it's ultimately up to the city of Sebastian. I do know that we can't lose this opportunity to bring that property into the city of Sebastian. I mean, let's go ahead and let P&Z do what it is they need to do. And apparently there's a schedule that no one had seen, and everything is beginning to come into a different light. But just to let it go by and run the risk of the county or the city of Fellsmere just grabbing it up at the snap, because they're ready. They're ready for it. Then we would have no control over what went in there. And to my knowledge, I lived here back in 1988, and I lived here for 10 or 15 years in and moved away and came back when I retired. But never in my time did I think that the city of Sebastian was in the bird and fish killing business. So I think the environmentalists need to probably really think about that, because it seems like if Fellsmere wants it, fine. The county wants it, fine. If the city of Sebastian wants it, let's jump through some hoops. And it's strange. There's a reason behind that. And for some reason, I feel in my heart the county wants that land for something they've already got planned. There's so much planned for that corridor. They're 4-lane and 510. They're putting in a great big old roundabout. They've got Liberty Park. They've got Blue Water Bay. They've all kinds of things on the North County construction plans on the county website. I think they already know what kind of infrastructure they need for utilities. How could they not, when all that land is between here and there? They know that it's going to build up. So, in my opinion, if we lose this, the city residents better get their wallets ready, because we'll need to raise our taxes to maintain what we already have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Yes, ma'am. Stop talking.
Hi, I'm Louise Cottenberg. I came here tonight to be an observer, but I just couldn't resist. Sorry. If you don't move this ahead, all this conversation is nothing but conjecture. The only way to get to formulating a legitimate plan is to move the process forward. Otherwise, this is a waste of everybody's time. Right, the reason that I feel that this is a good thing for Sebastian, and even though the land is now larger than it was before, that plan is dead. This is now. We are like, if you picture, I'm kind of a plain talker, so if you picture yourself living in a house that doesn't have enough closet space, and you come home with your new gadget, and you think, well, where should I put it? I don't have any place to put it. That's where we are right now in this city. Everybody would like to have some jobs and some good employment, and we'd like to have some more commercial things here, maybe some more restaurants. Our closets are full. We need to have more space, and it's not just the residential space that's needed here. The current population requires more commercial space, requires more recreation space. We need it. Additional population, which is going to be there whether we have any control over it or not, as is evidenced by some of the things that have been currently approved, they are going to need more space as well. So move it ahead in order to get a decent plan. Otherwise, this is just conjecture. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Comberg. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
The stare.
Ms. Matthews.
Sherry Matthews, Sebastian. I do have to say that this is amazing because this puts everything in perspective. Annexation, as we've said, and I've said before, and we've all said, that is the way that municipalities grow. It's one of our main way of growing. And the due diligence that is put across from the five, all of the city, the five of you, has been above and beyond. And even though sometimes there's a little bit of disagreements, the dissension, but that's what makes a healthy dialogue. That's what brings the eyes into this and what it's opening. You know, I think all of us have the same concerns, and our concerns are that we are informed properly, that we are transparent, that we move forward with the annexations and every agreements that we can do, making sure that we're the right way. The one things that, and maybe, you know, I can't speak on what's gone on behind closed doors, but I can speak on what's been open and public, that I just don't want the misinformation to get out there that I think the county is trying to tell us how to do. Again, this is only open. But I don't think the county can do anything on their part until we tell them what we're doing. And it's just, and if it is different, then it is different. But I think that we have that control, that where what we need to do and our part in this play is with an annexation agreement, is where we're going to move forward, how we're going to move forward, and at that time we have a plan to where the county can say, now we can help you. They can't help us if we don't have a plan for them to help us with. I don't think that the county is in this to tell us how to grow the city. I don't think it's their job, and I think you guys are doing an excellent job in maintaining those boundaries. And so I'd love to see this move forward. I think at some time, I think that maybe if somewhere along the line somebody can explain the annexation process and the progression of how you're going to move forward and what you do and how the agreement comes into play and where it comes into play, I think that will also help a lot of the misinformation that is going on in the community. Because I think that that's one of the biggest things, and you know as well as I do how quickly it moves. But you guys have done an excellent job in moving this forward. Looking forward to the annexation done in the right manners, the right way, and moving forward, and thank the city in all of their diligent efforts in doing what they've done.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sharon Herman, Sebastian. I know there's a lot of repeat. I think everyone wants to make sure the message is getting through, not only here, but out in public Zoom. First, I want to thank y'all because y'all are doing a great job, and staff. I can't imagine what a task this must be when you've got so many different directions being pulled and so much to accomplish. But Sebastian is growing, and it has to. We're basically landlocked. If we don't start spreading out a little bit, pretty soon we are not going to have that opportunity at all. Everybody that's planting themselves around our city limits is still using our restaurants. They're still using our roads. They're still using our schools. They're still using our services. If somebody has a heart attack over at Mulligan's, it's our ambulance that goes over there. It's not county because those people live in the county, okay? People need to understand this, and we need to not take the chance to lose this annexation because we're slowing down a little bit or whatever. I, for one, am very grateful that the Graves brothers came back to us and gave us this second opportunity, because after what happened with the last one, it would not have surprised me if they said, you know, we are not going to spend that kind of money and take that chance again. You know, that would be reasonable. As far as the county goes, you know, do we communicate with the county? I'm sure we do from everything we hear, but it's still not their decisions. It's y'all's decision. And it's our citizens' input that affects this. Do they know what's going on along 510? Yes. They've known for years. They've been working on this for years. It's not a new ball game. We as the city, we need this property annexed. We've got to expand our businesses, our housing, our restaurants, and everything. And y'all know that. And we trust you to do the right thing. I want to thank the Grave Brothers again for giving us another chance, and all of y'all for everything that you do for our citizens, our cities, and me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Karen Jordan, Bob, Fred, Jim, Chris, Ed, Paul, Manny, I don't know your name, attorney. Thank you, thank you, thank you, you too. Thank you. I wouldn't have your job for love or money. What you've said tonight certainly shows me the passion that you have. And just like all the women that have come up here and talked, I trust you're trying to do the right thing. I trust that. If I didn't think that's what it was, well, I don't know, what could I do? Annexation, I'm for it. And I'd like to see you get a helper. We all need helpers. And the thing I'd like to see us get come November or whenever we're voting is a woman on that board up there, boys. Please, vote for a woman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this item this evening? Yes, ma'am. You can vote for two, a woman and a man if you want. I mean, that would be fine. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Sharon Tyson, and I've been involved with planning meetings across the state of Florida, South Florida, Central Florida, been to a lot of meetings, and heard a lot of discussion similar to this one. One of the things that does concern me, and it seems a little pre-decisional, is that you all haven't reviewed the agreement. And it sounds like, you know, I heard with stormwater, we don't even know what those fees that were proposed are. I mean, those are the most important things that you're looking at, I think, to see what that infrastructure is going to be. And I'm really disappointed to hear people not understand how important the county and the state are in helping cities function with infrastructure, water supply. I mean, that's something that we have to look at into the future. So I think that's something that you all need to pay very close attention to and read every detail of that agreement before you say that you're supporting the annexation. You haven't had all the workshops, you haven't had all of the input. This is a new round. This isn't the same proposal as before. And I think that we also, you know, you've got all these things to consider with changes in our climate. That I worked with land use here in this area, actually on the state property and other permitting of the area way before the city of Sebastian grew. And I'll tell you, we had a big drought in 2002, but nothing like what we may be seeing now. So those are things that we need to consider. We really need to think about water supply, stormwater management. You know, my neighborhood floods now. I'm not seeing a lot of work being done to address that, you know, with all the infill that's happening. So I think it's a big picture. You guys need to look at it closely and really consider your decisions after you've reviewed the decision documents. So, you know, please take that to heart and, you know, think of all the citizens and our future here, because I plan to stay here and I've lived in different areas. I've lived here since 1996 on and off. So I think that, you know, it's something to think about and you need to carefully consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak this evening? All right, seeing none, just want to clarify a couple of things. We are not against the county. Sometimes we disagree on things and sometimes things are said. When disagreements are made, that's called discourse. Discourse happens and it's good. So I'm very happy with the direction the council is moving right now, so I'm going to go ahead and call the vote.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
No.
Councilmember Nunn?
Yes.
Mayor Hill,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Jones.
Yes.
All right, thank you all so much for coming out here on this Friday evening. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We are adjourned.